Okay, so Michael Pollan thinks that, back in the old days, people were vegetarians were very rare, but now people are talking about it more, and he wonders if it isn't part of a larger thing where human beings are becoming better. In the old days, people used to think owning human slaves was fine, and now we think that's terrible. People used to think treating women like property was fine. Now we think that's terrible. Maybe 100 years from now, people will think eating animals, killing them for enjoyment is just as terrible as owning slaves or treating women like property. So, or the women, yeah, okay, cool. So let's take a look at what he says here. He's kind of imagining, he's wondering if that's possible. And he's wondering if it's a relic of an ignorant past that will very soon fill us with shame. And maybe we'll feel bad about eating animals. That, at least, is the animal philosopher's wager, meaning philosophers who care about animals are wagering, they're betting that this is true, that 100 years from now nobody's going to eat meat anymore because it's a terrible practice. But it could be that the cultural norms and rituals that used to allow people to eat meat without agonizing it have broken down for other reasons. Perhaps as the sway of tradition in our eating decisions weakens, habits we once took for granted are thrown in the air, where they're more easily buffeted by the force of a strong idea or the breeze of fashion. So he's not sure what he thinks. So he imagines two possibilities. He says maybe one possibility is that we're becoming better human beings, and that's why people are asking questions about whether it's okay to eat animals. He says another possibility, though, is that we used to kind of believe more in the rules. We believed that if we just followed the rules set down by, say, religious leaders, like they do in Muslim and Jewish communities, that everything would be fine. And now that people have sort of less faith in those kinds of ideas, that means people are questioning. And the more you question, the more you may think, well, wait a minute, why is it okay to eat meat? Whereas before you would have just done what your culture did. But now that culture doesn't have such a strong hold on people, maybe that's the reason why people are asking questions about being vegetarian. Okay, just going really well. Almost done. Actually, let's see. We got this paragraph. 3 paragraphs left. Here we go. Um, Whatever the cause, the effect is an unusual amount of cultural confusion on the subject of animals. For at the same time, many of us seem eager to extend the circle of our moral consideration to other species, meaning maybe it's not just about being nice to other human beings, maybe we should be nice to cows. In our factory farms, we're inflicting more suffering on more animals than at any time in history, right? Because there's more people alive now than there used to be, which means more animals are being killed. One by one, science is dismantling our claims, that should be our, not out. One by one, science is dismantling our claims to uniqueness as a species, discovering that such things as culture, tool making, language, and possibly even self consciousness are not, and we used to think, the exclusive property of Homo sapiens. So this is making things more complicated as every day. He says scientists keep discovering stuff that really reminds us that, animals are a lot like us. A lot of the things we do, animals do. Animals communicate, animals have a little civilization. They're similar. There's more similarities than differences. And if there are more similarities, if you're against eating, if you're a human being and you're against eating other human beings, why? Because they're like you. Well, maybe you should also be against eating animals because animals are also like you. This is something, right? This is something people think about, right? Because people say, well, human beings are just animals. Well, okay, then maybe you shouldn't be eating animals. Um, And of course, the opposite argument is to say that animals eat other animals, but we're supposed to be better than that, so maybe we shouldn't. Okay. Oops, wrong button. Okay. Um, and yet, most of the animals we eat lead lives organized very much in the spirit of Descartes, who famously claimed animals were mere machines, incapable of thoughts or feelings. So Descartes was a philosopher, and Descartes was kind of an important philosopher, but he said something pretty terrible, which he said, "No, animals, they're basically machines. They don't have feelings. They don't feel pain. They don't care if you kill them and eat them." And Descartes said this 400 years ago, 300 years ago, probably 300. Um, and he said it, and people were like, okay, it's okay to eat animals, but now we're thinking maybe that's not right. If you've ever owned a pet, I bet you will be smart. I bet if you've ever owned a pet, I bet you know more about animals than fucking Descartes did. Descartes' a famous philosopher, so fuck that guy. Okay. Um, There's a schizoid quality. Again, schizoid means sort of thinking opposite things at the same time. It's a form of he's using it. Schizophrenia is sort of when your brain is confused. Schizoid is like thinking opposite thoughts at the same time. There's a schizoid quality to our relationships with animals today, in which sentiment and brutality exist side by side. Half the dogs, and here's this example, half the dogs in America will receive Christmas presents this year, yet few of us ever pause to consider the life of a pig, an animal easily as intelligent as a dog that becomes the Christmas ham. So he says there's a lot of contradiction the way we do things. Like he's half of all dogs get Christmas presents, but then we eat the pig for dinner at Christmas. So Christians eat pigs often for dinner at Christmas. So he says that's crazy. Like, how can we think both things at the same time? How can you care about animals so much that you buy your dog a Christmas present? Your dog doesn't know it's Christmas. He doesn't know what day of the week it is. That's a human thing. Um, so so he doesn't know, but you buy a dog a Christmas present. But then for dinner at Christmas, you have a pig. So he says it's a tricky situation to be in because on the one hand, people are really sensitive about animals. They care about them, like people buy their dogs Christmas presents. But also they don't care about animals because they're totally fine having Christmas dinner be a pig that was killed. And scientists will tell you pigs are smarter than dogs. So what are we doing? Okay, guys, we made it to the very last page of this semester. All right, let's get there. The final thing. We tolerate this schizophrenia, again, that sort of thinking opposite thoughts at the same time, because the life of the pig has moved out of view, right? You know your dog really well, but the pig that is your Christmas dinner, you don't know that animal at all. When's the last time you saw a pig in person? Meat comes from the grocery store, where it is cut and packaged to look as little like parts of animals as possible. When was the last time you saw a butcher at work? The disappearance of animals from our lives has opened a space in which there's no reality check on sentiment or brutality, meaning you may love animals and think they're wonderful, you may be fine with animal being killed, but you don't know anything about the reality. You don't actually see what's happening, and so you're detached from reality. And one of the ways you get detached from reality is when you buy meat in the store, it just comes in like a square, and it doesn't look like an animal. My mother. Used to order fish at this fancy restaurant. And one of the things, if you get fish from a good restaurant, what they will do is they will bring you the whole fish with the head still on. And my mother did not like the fish looking at her. She thought I think it probably made her feel bad. It's creepy, little fish looking at you. So she said, can you remove, and restaurants like to keep the head on because it shows you the fish is fresh. So my mother said, can you please take the head of the fish off? She finally got up the courage to be polite and say to the guy, look, I don't want the fish head on here. And so they brought her the fish without a head, and then they brought her the head on a separate plate. That's My mother is experiencing more. When you eat fish, you see more of the animal. But like, when you eat pork, they don't bring the whole pig to the table with the legs and the face and the whole thing, right? They leave that stuff back in the kitchen because they don't want you to think about where it comes from. All right, cool. We're gonna finish this today. The disappearance of animals from our lives has opened a space in which there's no reality check on sentiment or brutality, right? So whatever you feel, animals are stupid, eat them, animals are wonderful, I love them, you're actually not hanging out with or seeing that many animals, and you're not seeing people kill the animals to make meat. It is a space in which the Peter Singers and the Frank Perdues of the world fare equally well. Peter Singer is an animal, he cares about animals. He is a philosopher who is fighting for animal rights. He wants less animals killed, maybe no animals killed. He wants everybody to be vegetarian. Frank Perdue is a man who sells chickens for a living in the grocery store. Perdue chickens is a kind of chicken you buy in the grocery store. So he says it's funny because we live in a world, people love animals, or they feel like, fuck it, I'm going to eat all the animals I want, I don't care, because they don't actually ever see or hang out with animals, which makes it real easy to have a guy like Peter Singer who talks about animal rights and don't be a vegetarian, and a guy like Frank Perdue whose entire life is about killing chickens and selling them to you in little packaging at the grocery store. Okay, I'm gonna finish this video, and we're finishing this in the next video.